productions of this play that have happened have been the definitive productions.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been rewriting the play and revisiting the play on and off over the years. And, I think I started talking to Danny about this after the Kavanaugh hearings. And I sent him the play, and he really liked it. And I said, well, I kind of want to do a little more work on it. And that's kind of what led us to this wonderful production at the Pasadena Playhouse.
Wow.
Now did this play come to you because of some sort of personal experience, or is it?
Yeah.
Okay, this.
It's a good question. I mean, I went to a prep school, an all-boys prep school, in just outside of D.C. where I grew up, and I never experienced anything like in the play, but it's based on I think what started me writing about the play was the Duke lacrosse scandal. I don't know if you guys remember that.
Of course,
years ago, where the lacrosse team had a party where things got extremely questionable, and accusations were flying, and I want to say it was based on that one incident, but honestly, these kinds of scandals have been happening, with alarming frequency. And it was something I wanted to write about, and I wanted to write about my high school experience. So I sort of combined the two, and it, in one way, it's very personal and based on my time at my prep school. But on the other hand, it is about this bigger phenomenon, which is young men behaving poorly in these rarefied settings of prep school, which is, it's always sort of a hot house of testosterone and privilege and insecurity and so it's both personal and in response to something that happens all too often.
Understandable, but wasn't the Duke lacrosse team completely exonerated?
It absolutely was. It absolutely was. It was discovered that all the story was completely fabricated, and in many instances that does happen. When I started the play, though, it was before they'd been exonerated, and it had led me to a bunch of other cases. For instance, there was a case of a football team, I think in Steubenville, New Jersey, that had kind of gotten in trouble and stuff like that. And it sort of, I kept turning up more and more. There was a scandal at the Horseman Prep School. There was a scandal at a prep school in Baltimore that all kind of spoke to the same thing. So yes, the Duke players were, as far as I know, totally exonerated. But the culture was very much put on trial, I think, with that case, and that's kind of what happens in the play too.
Well, it seems to me that this is also interesting times because you wrote it initially way before the Me Too stuff happened, with Weinstein being exposed and Spacey and all that. So, how do you feel about that now? Did that impact that kind of massive sea shift in what gets talked about and what gets called for to be changed? Did that impact how you did the rewrites?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. The play is a period piece. It's set in 1989, and
good times.
It happens before, even the language with which we talk about Me Too, toxic masculinity, check your privilege. All these phrases and words we use, every day. Those phrases didn't really exist back then. It was stuff you didn't talk about or question, or it was sort of unchecked. So in that way, it is very much a period piece because it doesn't it's very much an old boys locker room mentality, and not many people are challenging it. Our main character, the boy's mother, Elizabeth Hardy, does challenge it, but she's very much a lone wolf on this. and there's not the kind of the uprising and the revolution that is happening now. It's a woman going in the play. She's kind of on her own, navigating these very treacherous waters. As she says in the play, she's never been inside the prep school's gymnasium. She's never been inside the locker room. She's never been in the coach's office. So this is all, usually her husband deals with all that, but in the play, he's out of town on a business trip. So she's sort of the person driving this inquiry.
In the 90s, I went to this thing called the Sea Cadets, and in the Sea Cadets, it's like an almost all boys like military school. And I remember it was like you said, locker boy talk, but it was one of the greatest experience because it was mixed of really rich kids and really poor bad kids, and it was such a great experience bringing those two groups together. I don't think there was any other way those two groups would have come together. But don't you feel that you're right, there's a lot of bad things that happen when young men get rambunctious, but do you think that there's something good that comes out of it too? Can men find good amongst each other?
Yeah, it's funny. Some of my classmates from my school are like, when they heard about the play or saw the play or read the play, they said, "Wait, did you not have a good time?" And I said, "No, I did have a good time," and I felt like I got an incredible education there. I went to a Jesuit prep school, and there are so many ideals that the Jesuits espouse that I think did shape me and were good, and they were ideas about serving others, and they were ideas about honor. So absolutely, I think that there's a positive to it. I think if there weren't, people wouldn't be fighting to try to keep that going. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I think that's fascinating, actually, your story. I find a little bit when you come to sexual allegations, I have friends and acquaintances that have been wrongfully accused, and we all know people that have been rightfully accused. And where does that fall? Because when you say a couple of things, it made me go, well, you're kind of hitting it with a broad brush. And I always think that each individual case should be tried on its own, and Lady Justice should be blind, and the truth should come out, and people who are wrong should be prosecuted, and people who are right should be exonerated. And does that come through in this play?
Yeah, it 100% does. The play isn't based on the Kavanaugh hearings, and it isn't based on any specific thing. The play is about a unique group of people, the characters in the play, working their way through a crisis. It is not a universe. The play is not called. The boy has a name. He's not called the boy. The mother has a name. She's not called the mother. They are not meant to represent any universal truth.
Right.
They are the people caught up in this drama. And what you say, kind of the challenge you just threw there, either intentionally or not, was, is it possible to indict an entire system when really it should be individual case by case basis. In the play, the mother tries to, I think, blame the culture. Say, my son wouldn't have done this if it hadn't been for the environment and the culture. And she's challenged by that in the play. And the coach says, don't kid yourself. There are a lot of kids in this culture who haven't done anything remotely like what your son has been accused of doing. So I agree that there's nothing
disparaging
against more pressing and demanding to do than to look at these cases individually and to look and judge the characters or the individuals as individuals. So that is a dialogue that the play has, I think, with the audience and with the characters on stage.
Thank you, Roberto. I just want to say, as another artist who wants to produce things and creates things and does things, I just find it amazing that you could be so successful and now you go back to your first love. Like, this is what I wanted to do. So I'm really impressed and congratulate you that you're able to do what it is you wanted to do originally, but you had to get so successful outside of that to go back and do your first heart's love. So congratulations.
Hey,
thank you. I appreciate that.
So I want to ask you a couple things about Riverdale and Sabrina.
Woohoo, Riverdale!
Because, dude, you
got some fans here.
There's a chance of a lifetime here. So I wanted to ask, though, when it came to how did you know how to reinvent things? Because you're in charge of Archie Comics, basically, the last few years. And then Archie went from, when I was a kid and a teenager, and even into my 20s, I worked at a bookstore and I'd see the Archie comics and I was like, oh gosh, it wasn't my thing at all, the old school type. And then when I heard about the TV show, I was like, what? And then I watched it and I was hooked, like instantly. It was like Twin Peaks with teenagers and John Hughes and 80s actors as the parents, and the kids are amazing. You found. So I'm just wondering, how did you manage to make that shift? Because it's just a complete reinvention.
Actually, the guy who's really in charge of Archie Comics is a guy named John Goldwater. He's the publisher, and owner of the company, and his
Can I borrow some money?
His father created Archie, and
That's awesome.
He was really supportive of this. I'll be honest with you, I had a real passion for the characters, and I love those old Archie comic books.
So did I, by the way.
When I originally started doing it, it was to have been a movie, and
wow,
that's what I pitched around Hollywood.
Yeah.
And I had just seen the wonderful movie Perks of Being a Wallflower, which is a coming of age.
I love that title.
It's a great movie, man. Great book, great movie.
Yeah, it's a great movie.
Yeah.
And I remember leaving the movie theater and saying, wow, if I could do that with Archie and his friends, that would be really amazing. And eventually, no one bought the movie. And then I tried it as a TV show, and basically nobody wanted it. And then Fox bought it, and Fox, the pitch, and said, you've got to put your stamp on these characters. Right now, this is kind of an earnest high school show, and you've really got to find your way into it. And that's when we introduced the mystery of the dead student Jason Blossom, and it kind of became, as you say, a Twin Peaks and a murder mystery. And the show really found itself. And ironically, Fox didn't make that pilot, so we had to take it out again. And almost no one wanted, but the CW bought it, and that kind of led to Riverdale. And I've worked on a bunch of shows. I have tons of friends who work on TV shows. Sometimes you catch lightning in a bottle, and sometimes you don't. And
true.
The cast of actors that came together to play these roles, it was at the right time that a lot of teen shows were going off the air, and people had nostalgia and love for the characters, and we had an amazing group of adults that attracted a different generation, and people were really excited about the juxtaposition of the Archie wholesomeness with the darker, more noir, murder mystery elements, and it just kind of worked. But I have to say, I'm as shocked as I've been as shocked as anyone that the show's done as well as it has. I love it, and everyone who's working on it pours everything into these episodes. So I'm grateful and gratified that people love them. But could I have predicted it? No, not really.
Well, okay, so I got a couple more questions I want to get across because